Everyone, welcome back in to Betsperts Golf here for the 2024 Mexico Open betting preview here. My friend Andy Molitor. Andy, what's going on, bud? Welcome back. And you get a little, you were here last week, so no one even knows you were on vacation. That's just, I got a vacation coming up soon. We'll do it the same way. You won't even know that we were gone, but, did wine country treat you well?
Yeah, the weather held out for most of it, but yeah, it's easier to do these little 4 or 5 day little getaways, like Wednesday, Thursday through the weekend. Just did a bunch of wine tasting. I didn't get a chance to play Silverado or Tiburon or anything over that way because I was with some people who don't golf, and also I'm never shipping my clubs. Like I'm just not that big of a golfer that I would spend the money to ship the clubs. And then it's like, I don't want to rent clubs either. So just got drunk, ate a bunch of good food, walked around, had a good time. Didn't watch as much golf as I would have liked to. So obviously I had to catch up a little, although I was back, I was back Sunday in time to catch some. We had a little sweat. You talked me into Zal at a big price. Process is there. Just what are you going to do when Matsuyama goes absolutely just nuclear for, I don't know, the entire, it was just perfect. Like just a perfect round from him. He was so good, just throwing darts, making the putts, getting up and down when he needed to. And that's how you win a golf tournament, by several strokes at that point. So congrats to him. I mean, it was a kind of one of those we talked about. We didn't weigh putting. We said, hey, there's some guys that can't putt that might win this week. And Matsuyama's hard to predict when he's going to do that. But we also talked about, and this is brought up a million times by everybody on Sunday, there are some Augusta and Riviera comps. And this is a guy who obviously won there as well.
I mean, to have it jam-packed, we had 5 guys tied on the back 9 there for a stretch. And then for him to win by margin, he won by 3 strokes. It was just so massive. And that like little stretch of 12 through 16 where he just tucked those 2 next to 15 and 16 for like just absolute, kick-in birdies. And everyone else is struggling. I mean, I think Cantley went through that stretch 2 over, Xander 2 over. Our boy Zal was like even, and he held himself into that mix when Luke List kind of, faltered a little bit there too. But yeah, good sweat at a long price, which you feel good about. Yeah, gosh, it feels like what betting on Zalatoris to win golf tournaments has been like for the past 3 years. It's just like, yeah, you're going to have a sweat on Sunday, and, we only got home the one time. But yeah, I mean, look, it's just good to see. He seems to have found something with the broomstick putter. Maybe Scotty should try that out. Because again, Tee to Green and a Zal that was like, has been pretty immaculate throughout his entire time as being a tour pro. It just is something that he hasn't been able to solve. So yeah, interesting to see what happens there moving forward. I know the Masters and some of the, futures that were out there have got a little bit shorter on both guys, Zal and Hideki, who also is another, like Zal, has been like a walking DQ. Like like the neck, the back, like the full, I need a bacchiotomy. Like, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not even going to sing.
I was making a Friday reference, but yeah,
I know he had the bacchiotomy. I was Hideki, my back, my neck, my back. He's got his green jacket though, guys, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, it seems healthy, like you mentioned with Zal. The putting's better with the broomstick. I don't know if Scotty needs to go full broomstick, but I think he should try something. When you're, like we mentioned, the best golfer, and it's not close, there's a big freaking gap between you and number 2 as far as like total strokes gained between the tee and the green, and you're not winning tournaments. It's worth trying something different. It's just like everything anything in life. Like, hey, it can't hurt. I can't get worse. I guess he couldn't get worse. He
I suppose he could.
A rake and a hoe and a pool cue, but it's worth exploring. I know some guys hate doing that because they think it messes up what they have and makes it even worse, or they can fix how they're doing it. But yeah, if I were him, I'd try something. I'm not a golf coach. This is not financial advice, Scotty. I think you're going to be just fine. Obviously, Michael in the chat said he had List 150 to 1. What a kick in that! It was one of those two where it was a bunch of guys tied, but List, yeah, he had that lead for a spell. He was looking pretty good. I guess in my mind, just watching it, I'm like, Cantley and Xander aren't going to win. Like, it's just one of the other. I had that in my mind. I'm like, that's what I believed. I could get Sal home. I'm like, Cantley and Xander just aren't going to win this. Like, I never believe in those guys. And they have to be front running. It feels like they have to have some. And I don't know, maybe somebody can correct me on that and find a spot where they had a nice comeback. But it feels like I'd feel a lot better if they were front running and not competing with a bunch of guys right in the middle of the pack like that in a pack of wolves. So congrats to Hideki. Congrats to anyone who had him. I know Ron had him high in some of the models he looked at the last week. It would have been great to get Sal, but we move on from an elevated event with a good field to Old Mexico. And this is a good conversation for, the ball, rolling the ball back and playing at some of these events where they just want to like, hey, let's have a tournament here. We really want to have a tournament here. Like, it's a resort course. We see this. Like, this course is just going to get destroyed by people. It's just too easy. You can only make a course so long unless we start like, fuck it, the course is 8,500 yards, par 70. Like, you do
par 70,
ridiculous like that. Like,
yeah,
they're like, oh, we'll just add distance, which is what they did a few years ago when they introduced this to the tour. They added a bunch of bunkering as well. But it's crazy. Like, hey, we added like 500 yards and 100 bunkers, and it's still one of the easiest on tour because it started as a resort course. So it's kind of what you're going to get. It is going to be an easy course where distance is just it's going to play on your first two shots, and then it turns into who's putting.
Yeah, we are stretched out here. This is a par 71 track that is got a unique blend of holes here. But you got long par threes or some long par threes, long par fives. You got one really long par five. There's not a lot to it. Like you said, it is a resort course, but again, average driving distance here higher than the average events, pushing 300 on average, almost 8 yards higher than a tour average event. Accuracy higher as well than the tour average event. Again, kind of different than what we had last week, obviously. Fairway width, about 7 yards wider than the average fairways on tour. There is no missed fairway penalty, basically. Greens and reg, even being higher outs with basically 63% of the approach shots last year at this event were 175 and higher. A large amount from 250 plus as well. So like there's just a lot of length, and still we're finishing with a leader here. And again, this is only our third year here, but again, guys getting a little bit more familiar after playing the first time. I think saw some success and how to navigate it and kind of what the magic sauce would be to kind of have some success here. We still are reaching, mid 20s for the winner here last year with Finau. Year before, the scoring wasn't quite as low, but I think just overall scoring relative to par down even further here last year. So like there's some water. Yeah, there's some bunkering, but just in general, like it's grip it and rip it. There's not a ton of penalty, just like any place, if you were going super wayward off the tee, yeah, you're going to run into some trees. In this place, you might run into some water. But like, even if you're a little bit off and you still need to pound it down here. This is definitely what we would consider a driver heavy course when we start to look at, data here into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to get too deep into real granular data this week. I don't know how long this podcast is going to be because there's not a ton to say. We'll talk about the field in a second, but yeah, it's any article you read, any podcast you're going to listen to, and I've heard some good points, but it is hey, this course is easy. It is a driver heavy, long iron heavy. Like if you have distance, if you have carry distance, if you have a good driver club head speed, you're going to be just fine here. It's been painfully apparent in the leaderboards we've had the first couple of years was some guys that can grip it and rip it, go big off the tee, have kind of peppered the top 10, the top 20 of the leaderboard. The other issue too, and I don't even know if this is a true issue based on everything I just said, is we've only played here a couple of years. We don't have a ton of data.
Yep.
Have, 2 years of data with some ho-hum fields to look at. So it makes it a little more difficult to actually like evaluate what we're seeing here. So it's a bit of a tricky week. It's a small purse. It's a kind of a rough field. I mean, Zal ended up pulling out because of placing high enough last week, moved him into a spot where he can get into API easy. I believe was the case there. He got put into
Yep.
like, there's these subcategories of like qualifying. He ended up qualifying for that, so he pulled out of Mexico, making the field even worse. I don't know what do you think of the field outside of thank God Tony came here to defend?
I mean,
A lot of youngsters, good young names.
I think it's not an exciting casual watch, right? If you're a passive golf fan and you want to see some familiar names in the mix on Sunday, you're probably, unless you're a real golf hardo like us, you're probably not going to be familiar with some guys that are in the mix here this week. Just kind of the nature of it. This is, I think, a byproduct of these signature events. We are, kind of in the middle of a couple here, and that's what's going to happen. Although, I mean, we don't have one next week, but just this is a nice time as we transition from the West Coast California swing as we start to head east here, moving to Florida next week, where guys just take a little bit of a breather, start to get the games right, coming off of some signature events here in a pretty busy, even like you had a good field in Phoenix at Scottsdale. That's not a signature event, but a lot of those guys still played, right? They played Pebble prior. They played here, obviously, at the Genesis last week. So natural bye week for a lot of guys here. And, I think we'll have a pretty decent field for the Honda, but like this has just made a ton of sense. Whereas it made sense why Rahm would come here every year, right? Like it's a Spanish. I think there was something to that for him. It's like we're in Mexico. Like that's a piece of it. Tony's had some familiarity and some success. It's just hard to get other top 50 guys here. And here we are. So this is, what's going to happen. But from a handicapping standpoint, look, there's still bets to be made and edges to be had if you want to do the work.
Oh, yeah. And we are definitely going to call it the Honda a bunch of times, even though that is not the name of the tournament next week. Yeah. It is the Cognizant something or other. So, yeah,
PGA National.
PGA National. That's a good way to do it. So, course features, other than that, like we said, we added the bunkering. We added the distance when they added this as a tour stop a couple years ago. Other than that, like you said, wide fairways, not terribly penal rough. You can get in trouble. Obviously, there's water. You can find water. You can find some of these bunkers, but truthfully, it's like they just kind of plopped a course down here on the west coast dish of Mexico, and they can't. You can't jack it up too much because you still have to return it to being a resort course for the other 51 weeks of the year. Like so many people, and that was the point I was going to make, was there was actually an article written about how stupid hole 4 was last week. And it's like, no, we need holes like that. Like golf is these guys are technology with clubs, technology with balls, technology with coaching, with the tech around, your monitors and every, all the little things you can do to improve your swing, your ball flight, your spin, your control, everything, your shaping. Like we're seeing lower and lower scores at some of these places where we hadn't seen them before. Like, fuck it, throw in some really hard holes. I don't care if there's not a single birdie all week on a hole. Like that's kind of fun. It is fun to have a risk reward or just one or two. If you made all 18 like that, obviously people would be pissed and nobody wants to see that. But like throwing in a few holes like that, that's what you need because you can't just do this. Like I said, you can't make it an 8,000 yard par 70. You can't just keep moving tee boxes back. You're running out of real estate. People are hitting it that far anyway. Like you need to start skinnying up some fairways and putting some bunkers and some pain in the ass spots. You need shaved edges on your greens. You need to make it harder. You need to roll them out a little more. I'm fine with making it harder. So not what we're going to see this week. Although, like we said, if you are very wayward, there is a ton of water. 12 holes have water, 106 bunkers. Just it is grip it and rip it, but there is a little bit of a nuance to that too. You need to miss some of those hazards. Although, again, people are so good at hitting out of like greenside bunkers now. As long as you're not super short-sighted, a lot of those guys are fine anyway. It's just like I'd rather be in the bunker than in the long stuff here around the green anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of an example of that where you just continue to push it back and it isn't enough. Like like there's obviously a spike trend in like drivable par 4s, and I think those are entertaining to watch. I think 10 at Riv used to be like one of the more iconic ones, and like Now some people will push back on that, but again, like it's such an interesting hole because the green is so damn thin and narrow. Like, yeah, you can get the drive on there, but it's really hard to hold it because like the distance you need to get it there, the ball is scooting quite a bit. So, do you want to be kind of giving yourself an angle there, or do you want to find that front bunker and it could be short sighted? So, yeah, I mean, so we don't have a lot of that here at Vidanta. This is not a ton of nuance, but not a spot where the answer, I think an example of where the answer is like more distance is not really the answer in terms of what's going to make actual tour pros have difficulty over a 4-day event.
Yeah, there is a sub 300-yard par 4 here, which will be fun, but it's not like one of those where, I'm in huge trouble because I went for it and missed. Like,
correct.
There's gonna be a bunch of eagle putts there, which honestly I like that. I like a drivable par 4. Sure. I like it when they have the option to change it where, hey, it's like 350, 370, and then they have, hey, we're going to use the other tee boxes on Saturday or on Sunday, whenever they want, and create something different where, now it's 310, and you guys can actually go for this, and that'd be a lot of fun. So I don't mind it. I like variety. Again, this course is not going to give you a ton of that unless you just like looking at nice views in Mexico. So where's that lead? Yeah, where's that leave us? Anything else on the course, field, or anything else before we get into it?
Man, you just gotta hit it far. That's it. Hit it past Ballum. It's a little bit spongier. So I would think in terms of even when we get into the rabbit hole, start looking at stuff, distance matters. I think maybe you're not going to get that rollout that you could get sometimes with other surfaces because of the nature of past Ballum. We don't have a lot of past Ballum sample data because a lot of these coastal Caribbean courses don't have shot link data. So like that's a little bit noisy in terms of really outside of, the Mexico Open, which we only have, 2 samples of. And I think where were we a couple years ago, we had Kiowa Island when we had the PGA there a couple years ago, that also has a past Ballum. But again, like pretty small sample of data there in terms of what we want to grab.
Yeah,
but it's
the best you can do with like past Ballum putting too is like just guys who I don't know, putts per round. Like, you can look at that, but when you're not getting shot link data, it's harder to actually judge like who's good. There is a case for some of these guys who just are not POA guys. When you're looking at form, be like, hey, this guy, he's a long hitter. That's a key stat. Obviously, he's been good with the long irons. That's a key stat. Putting like shit for the last month, and you go look back at some of that guy's splits and see is like, he's just bad on POA. He's been bad on the West Coast putting. Like he's been much more comfortable just on other surface. Just say other, like bent, even Bermuda, some of the other mixed overseeded greens as well. So There's a few guys like that, I think, for sure. Otherwise, the key stat is hitting at a country mile because it's a longer course and there's some drivable holes. You got to score the 5s. You want to drive that drivable par 4, and then like you said, the long irons, because so many of these shots are going to come from like 175, 200 up to like 225, 250. There's going to be some long iron shots, and guys who can capitalize on that, like they're going to win.
Yeah, 16% of the approach shots last year came from 250 plus. I mean, that is almost double a tour average event. Like I said, 63% were from 175 plus. So not getting a lot of wedges. This is not a wedge fest. It could be a birdie fest at times, I suppose. You're going to have some pretty low rounds. I mean, Finau last year, Maram had like a nuclear, I think he had like a 61 in like round 3 or something to put himself in the mix. But like Tony won 24 under, and Tony was just like 64, 65, 65. Like he was just like consistently good. So, when you have to kind of fire 6 and 7 under every time out to take it home, I don't know what to call that other than a birdie fest. Like, down the board might not be massively low scoring. Like, if you were 11 under, you were 13 shots off the lead, but you were still inside the top 20. So, there's something to be said for you still got to go low to actually contend. So, I think just in general.
Yeah, I wonder is the handicap, just the past 2 years, like, hey, is there a good golfer here? Is there a guy who would contend at like a signature event or contend at a major? Oh, we should bet on him, no matter what the odds are.
I know.
And it is Tony with his odds, obviously, but there's some other guys. I think there's some very interesting ones. I'm going to do a little more placement betting this week because I think there's a few guys that can, play well, but I might have to take them with some top fives because I don't have a lot of outs that give me each ways. And that's kind of how I'd want to go. It's like, oh man, I feel like I could bet this guy. I feel like he can win. And it's going to be annoying when he is like clear, second, but loses to Tony by like 3 or 4 strokes, something along those lines, because obviously he's been very comfortable down here. Before we get into some building, some one and done. Just obviously I noted that off the top for one and done players. This is the opposite of last week. It is a very small purse. So you don't have to burn a big name here. This is one where you not only can you get a little squirrely down the board, you kind of have to. Unless you just want to burn Tony, which I don't think is a good idea. You do want to use someone a little lower down the board, someone you think you can probably top 5 here. And if you do want to get a little more data into your one and done process, obviously check out our sponsor, Pool Genius. The link to their site and their tool for one and done golf picks is in the description of the podcast and the YouTube. They're going to give you data-driven pick grades, highlighting the best strategic options, not for everyone, for you, for your specific one and done. You enter who you've used. Obviously, if you did it at the beginning of the year, it's even easier. You don't have to do that, but you put in how big your purse is, how big your contest is, how big what your entries are, what the rules are, and it'll come up with pick grades. Again, backed by the data for you. It's customized, in-depth golfer data and rankings each week. And again, they are running a limited time free trial. Go ahead and check it out over there. Like I said, the link in the description is going to get you that free trial. It's very similar to some of the products they do around NFL Survivor, March Madness. Nice product. I've checked it out. I like it. We give it the stamp of approval. Support us, support the sponsors. At least go give it a try with the free trial. I don't know who I'm using yet. I have no idea. But I think we should probably build a model and try to figure out who some of the squirrely ones are, because I've been a little behind this week coming back from vacation, just getting everything settled at home. I haven't built mine yet. I hate that because I'm going to be, obviously building one with you first, and I'm going to have to make mine a little different, but give me something to think about. The ones we toss away, like, I don't want to do it that way. Maybe we'll do it this way. All the ones we toss away, I'm going to put in my model this week.
Well, like we can get your extra insight since you haven't done this yet. So if you want to get full premium access to all that we're doing here at Betsperts Golf, you can check out our friends over at Vivid Picks. Download the Vivid Picks app in your app store. It is a DFS pick'em site like some of the others you're familiar with out there, though they are a little bit unique in terms of some of the offerings that they have. There's a social element. Like if you follow Andy and I on Vivid and tail plays that we have, like our play gets boosted. Like you get better odds on it too. We'll be running some Betsperts Golf specific boosts on the golf side there as well. You can sign up using our promo code Betsperts Golf. There are links here, which is available on the website as well. If you can find this article, use the promo code Betsperts Golf when you sign up. First deposit match up to $250. That's great. You will not find anything like that in the industry. So if you like these types of games, take advantage of that deal. It is great. Throw in $250. You instantly have $500 to play around with in your account. If you want to use it simply as a loophole to get access to Betsperts Golf, you can do so as well. $5 deposit and play. So you got to deposit and then you got to fire off at something. So if you want to wait and NBA comes back on Thursday as well. So you want to play NBA stuff. You want to do, again, they have multiple sports. Once you play, you'll get an email within 48 hours telling you how to access your subscription to Betsperts Golf for the year. Now, only available in 28 states. They're listed here. If that's not one of your states, contact us on Twitter at Betsperts Golf. We will give you the best promo code that we have available to get you access to cheaper. Whether you want to try us out for a month or come in for the full year, which you should, because we're really way too cheap, to be honest. And I think you maybe get a sense of that here in the show if you're joining us for the first time. But again, reach out on Betsperts Golf. We'll get you that promo code and get you access to it for cheap. That gets you access to everything. So all the written articles on the sites, all the tools, the Discord, and of course, the rabbit hole, which is what we're going to spend time here now with the rest of the show and build out a model and tell you what we think matters here. I want to do this just to show you too at the top because we'll build a model. I was messing around with this, Andy, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Let's look here. I want to look into the a little bit of floor ceiling, and I wanted to see what was going on here. I was trying to look at some spike putting. So let's look at the last 50 rounds. This gives you we talk about floor ceiling, spike putting weeks, the Luke lists of the world. Hey, this guy tee to green, Scotty Scheffler, just tee to green. Fantastic. If we can get a spike putting week, we're actually cooking with gas here. But what does it actually look like? How frequently is someone gaining strokes putting? How frequently are they gaining 2, 3, 4, 5 strokes in any particular strokes gain category? Putting is obviously the interesting one. And I found this to be fascinating. Let's look at the field. Let's do a minimum round here to capture, I think, a better sample size data. And you see here at the very top of the board, who is gaining over the last 50 rounds, just gaining any strokes on the green at the lowest rate in this field is your tournament favorite and defending champ, Tony Finau.
$12,000 on DFS on DK for you guys, and has not. So what sample? We're looking at the last 12 months.
50 rounds.
50 rounds of Tony Finau, and he is dead last in the field. Is times that he has had a putting week where he's gained at all. That means
just at all.
Has been well. I mean, that's just bang average. That's how SG works. So 70% of the time he is below average. Tough hang.
It's 7-1. We're doing, like you said, 1,200. Again, just and even more so than like for, I guess, a DFS discussion, becomes more of a game theory where you're at the top of the board, kind of fading the ownership there. It makes a ton of sense. Whereas betting is obviously more of a binary outcome. If you're backing Finau at 7-1 to win, or in the finishing position markets or whatnot, still interesting. But I found that to be pretty fascinating. It's been kind of a rough go for Finau here of late. So well, let's get back to what we're intending to do here. Let's build a model. But I wanted to share that with the folks here too. And again, I'm not telling you to not bet Finau. I'm not telling you to not play Finau in DFS. I just think that information is factual and I think impactful. It would be for me if I was building DFS lineups here early.
Yeah, you're really, really going to have to rely on his, tee to green play to be as good as it can be. I mean, he is an elite player compared to a lot of this field, but you're not going to be able to likely see him make up for a lot of it on the greens.
Yeah, and look, we'll search here, tee to green, even the last 50 rounds. Here he is, 5th in tee to green, 5th in ball striking. You would think he maybe be higher, but this is where we're at. So, all right, anchor stat, Andy. What do you want to do here? What are your initial thoughts?
Tee to green.
Okay. 50 rounds. You want to go smaller? You want to go a little of both? You want to go a larger sample at 50, smaller?
I like full year. You want to just do all rounds for the last year? Just see where we're at.
All right. Yeah, look at this.
Well, you're in 12. Just go to all. It's not going to be a huge number for some people, but you get about double that.
Double that. That gives us Finau at the top. All right.
You're going to anchor with that just so good golfers don't get drugged down too hard, because I think we're going to have to get weird with this today. Otherwise, it's just going to be carry distance, long irons, push go.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, around the green is not something that makes a ton of sense this week. But all right, we'll start there. Do you want to do anything with approach, or are we good with just capturing the tee to green stuff? Again, obviously double counting if we did something with approach. Or we're going to just get into the proximity buckets approach-wise?
Yeah, I don't know. If I was going to are you starting with approach, or should my brain wants to do it in order? But
okay. So go off the tee.
Off the tee. So, like you mentioned, you could just go distance here. You could go total driving. You can use any of these, but I don't hate doing carry distance again, just because it is it's a surface where the rollout isn't going to be as great. So apex height, carry distance, club head speed, any of those. If you wanted to make this is nice too, because we're trying to make a full model here, but you can make a little model of put driving distance, carry distance, apex height, and put those in a submodel, run that, and just see like who do I actually think is the best like driver of the ball in conditions like this. Go throw in some windy conditions too. See where that gets you, just for like total SG off the tee. Just I think that's why Ron named it the rabbit hole, because he spends too much time doing shit like that. Just, digging little sub splits like that. But I'm fine with carry distance unless you have a better reason for something else.
No, I like carry. I think it's interesting to look at always to see like where the deltas are between someone's carry distance rank and driving distance rank too, just to get a sense of, who gets, I guess, bonus points theoretically for rollout, or, who benefits more. Look, Cam Champ is not very good at golf. I guess maybe we thought that was going to happen a couple of years ago. I mean, it's a fantastic name just to be like an awesome golfer. Cam Champ is that's such a badass, like, guy that we can all get behind. He just isn't good, but he seems to just kind of show up at, I don't know, Cam Champ courses, or courses where you can absolutely grip it and rip it with very low missed penalty ranking. When the guy shows up at Augusta and competes, and seems to show up at this Vidanta in Mexico, regardless of form, and finds himself in the mix. So I do think that that's telling us a story. Same thing with Joseph Bramlett, Vincent Norman, young Swede who hits it a mile as well. These guys are getting a nice little bump from the carry distance. So I think carry probably tells a better story than absolute like driving distance this week. So let's go ahead and do that and take advantage. Again, not a stat that you can add or model anywhere else. And I think that helps. Again, that's kind of the goal here with having some unique stats in the rabbit hole, is that you can get a better build and a better sense of what actually truly matters when you're looking to understand how to handicap the week. So, and again, something like carry distance, driving distance, all these things, I think bigger samples too, because I think that's, you're going to kind of take out some of the noise that comes with club down spots, or, small sample where, hey, all of a sudden this guy I hit a tree and my drive went 125 backwards. And all of a sudden my driving distance for the week is way lower than normal. Like, obviously a larger sample is going to kind of take out the noise. So I think having a large sample like this makes a ton of sense. So we added carry distance. I think Andy's idea is pretty good. I think Ron made the case on our preview show on Monday for total driving being of value this week. I don't hate it. I'd probably put it on in like half of the weight of carry distance, but yeah, I'm good with just doing carry distance unless you disagree.
Oh, it's one of those things, and it's the same reason we're probably not going to use around the green. Like, if you're an inaccurate driver or an inaccurate with your irons, you're not going to win anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's why we stuck tee to green in there. Like, hey, are you a shitty ball striker? You're not going to compete this week anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are at putting around the green, how you are with your sand saves. The fact is, like, you're going to be, maybe missing the cut, maybe, finishing like 10 under. Like, that's just not going to get it done.
Yeah. So actually, let's back up, because I want to do this, and I would love your thoughts on it. I want to go into filtering by conditions. Ron made the case that this is not something he would necessarily think of as a like very easy scoring conditions. I mean, like, we're trying to pick a winner, right? This is an outright betting conversation. The winner is getting to 24 under here last year. I think you're going to have to get to 20 again. That to me is very easy scoring conditions. And I want to see who's doing well in those scenarios. So let's look at very easy scoring conditions in scenarios where it's a driver heavy event. Now, again, I don't like getting
make our sample bigger.
Yeah, we're gonna have to make the sample bigger. But again, like, this actually sample is going to be bigger than you think, because there are, as we talked about,
I think there's correlation between driver heavy and low scoring places.
Yeah. So I think this is an interesting way. Like, you can see, if you're seeing this, filter by condition section for the first time, you can do anything that you want in here in terms of splitting up and slicing and dicing this data. It is kind of wild, all the things that you can do in here as well. So let's see what happens here. We'll mess around with our sample size. I mean, look, just going last 12 months, all rounds, a lot of these guys were getting a pretty good sample. We're getting 36 rounds for some of these guys. I mean, how many guys are we getting 36 rounds for? 68. I mean, that's almost half the people, because we had a lot of guys that don't check the 16 round threshold anyway. You got a lot of guys with just a handful of rounds. So I don't hate this. We could back out and just go 2 years and see if that increases it by much. It doesn't. And that's kind of the point. There's just a lot of young guys in here. But again, so the guys that we're probably considering anyway, for the most part, I think it tells an interesting story. So let's just go back. We'll look at strokes gained total and see who's fared well in these scenarios. Again, this
Taylor Pendrith, boy, everybody likes Taylor Pendrith, present company included.
Yes, as well. And this looked very similar actually to what the tee to green thing was here as well. But I think this is capturing some guys that we weren't highlighting here. Spawn, who was also in that Finau drop down from a putting standpoint. It just tee to green stuff is great. Get them on the greens, and it is a unmitigated disaster more times than not. But I want to add this and just we'll make a note here that this is easy scoring, driver heavy. Because again, guys are hitting driver off the tee. There are no forced layups. There's no clubbing down. Guys are hitting driver. And I think this is something that is worth capturing. So we'll turn those off for the rest of it. But I wanted to do that and show that can be done. And I think this is a good place to do it. All right, we'll go back to approach. We can get into the approach range buckets as well. But I think there's some stuff in this approach section too, in terms of like, look, you got to score. And
going for green numbers.
Yeah,
is kind of
you got to be aggressive. Towards. Yep. So what do you want to do? Just overall proximity. How often are they going for the green? Their birdie rate when they do so. What kind of jumps out to you?
What's that one right next to it? Going for green. No. Third one in from the right. And if you're listening to this in podcast form and you're wondering, not a bad time to maybe pop over to YouTube if you want to see this. But we'll try to be as verbally descriptive as possible. But going for green, it's on your screen. I can't read it as well.
The hit rate?
I need to hit so that it's just like greens in regulation. The rate at which a player's second shot on a par 5 or the first shot on a par 4 finds the surface of the green. Oh, that's something. That's like basically eagle putts.
Yeah.
Do you have an eagle putt? All right. I don't know if I want to get that aggressive here, although that does come into play. Just maybe going for green, birdie or better rate.
Going for green, birdie or better rate. Okay, I like it. This is what we want to get. So this does capture a little bit of putting, and I think that's okay to do as well. Like I don't want to capture.
This is the only way I'd want to include putting.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Let's add this. Going for green, putting rate. We got a decent sample here as well. Do we want to make this sample is too big? Because we're all rounds 2 years, so I should probably back up a little bit.
Let's take it back to like last 50.
Okay. And I do have, again, you can see this option here to set a minimum round feature, so you kind of get rid of really, really small sample data. That will affect some of the outputs on some of these guys, but again, it's really hard to capture some of the data with those guys anyway. You don't want to throw off your, like, see here, even here, we get Ryu from Japan. We're getting a 22 round sample, right? So good enough to capture, but everyone else is going to be capturing 50 rounds. So he'll get a benefit from this, but still think it's worthwhile in capturing.
Boom. All right. We're adding going for green, birdie or better percentage. And then you want to do something long irons? Fairway approach accuracy?
So look, do you want to just do, I mean, you're going to be scoring from the fairway, right?
I just want to do like either proximity, fairway proximity, or fairway 200 plus. Like all the long ones, because there's so many. Even the guys who are long off the tee, there's going to be plenty of shots that are 200 plus. It's a long course.
Yes. Like I said, last year, driving accuracy here, 62.7%. Again, better than a tour average event. Finau, for instance, 75% driving accuracy for the week. John Rahm, who was in second, 65%. So, slightly above the average, but not great. Again, that also tells you that there are, 20-something fairways or approaches where he's not hitting the fairway. So I think fairway 200 plus is the way to go. But I also think just maybe a little bit of a smaller weight and seeing who's getting it done. from rough fairway or from rough 200 plus as well, I think is worthwhile.
Yeah, do them both. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do all 200 plus approach shots from the rough and 200 plus approach shots from the fairway last 50 rounds.
Yep. Love it. And we'll just change the weighting and make sure we're capturing fairway there in just a better way, because I think that's probably the right way to do it. All right. Any kind of agree that around the green,
nothing putting. No.
Any scoring, any other miscellaneous? Do you want to get into club head speed, or is that double counting in terms of some of the other stuff we have?
Probably double counting, because we already did tee to green and some off the tee.
Yep.
Putting, we included some putting with the birdie or better rate. So I think that probably covers us enough there.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't want to get too granular on anything else. So
right,
I might run her.
Okay. Create this. Let's see here what we got. Not bad. I think is the way.
We had 6 things. We got there. I was worried it was just going to be driving.
just carry distance and fairway 200 plus. Anchor tee to green. Like I said, you can hover over if you forget. If you didn't make a note for yourself here in the description section, you just click on this icon and it will tell you again what the filters were. So again, this is just last 12 months strokes gained tee to green. 2025. 25. It's probably pretty good.
Yeah, that'll work. All right, what's our next? I kind of like to rank them in my head as I'm doing this. What's my next most important one?
I think it's probably one of these next two. I think it is the carrier. I think you want to get something that I think the easy scoring driver heavy stuff matters.
So carry distance, I think.
Okay. You think 20, 15, 20?
Yeah, 20 is fine.
Yeah. And I think 20.
Yeah, puts us at 65 for the first 3, leaves you with 35 to play with. So
okay.
Oh, maybe because the last 2 are the same thing, just from long irons from 2 different places. Maybe 10 apiece for those, and that leaves you with 15 for the birdies or better.
Yeah, I want to do fairways a little bit more.
Okay.
So I just think we're gonna have more of those shots from there with the driving accuracy rate being a little bit higher. So
you do 15-10. And you say, oh, you're waiting 25% of the model on 200 plus. There's a lot of them. I'm not even matter. I'm not even worried about that.
Literally last year,
full ass quarter of the model with 200 plus approach shots. There's so many of them.
40% last year, a little over 40%. So it matters significantly. So, all right, this is our model. This is our Mexico betting show model. I will save it here for you. You will be able to save as many of these bad boys as you would like. You want to run. I think we fixed this. I think you should be able to run any of these models, any saved model, any, you want, you look here, I have a driving accuracy model. You want to run some just rolling form models, regardless of the field. Come in here, click on it, and take a look and see how it does. I think this is, again, off the tee models. You can save as many of these. You're not limited to any. You can see here, I click the save as expert model just to show you here back on the rabbit hole page. If you click in here to view expert ranking, you can view rankings from the staff and others. Here's Ron Kloss's model. Matt Vicenzi, shout out to Matt, banked 80 on Hideki last week. You can see Matt's model. Andy Lack, Inside Golf podcast. You can see Andy's model here as well. So along with everything that Andy and I do, simply by clicking on view expert rankings, and again, not an answer to the test, but simply, what is Andy putting in that, Andy and Noonan didn't on the betting show, or what's different from Lack's model versus Kloss's model, and to help build your own model and make, again, this is kind of a teach a man to fish situation versus here's the test, here's the answers. Because I think, even with what we get here when we spit out the results, I think should maybe just push you to do a little bit more research on a guy versus saying, I got to bet the top of the model blindly. So it's going to be Finau Jaeger. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Finau at the top, which makes a ton of sense. Steven Jaeger right behind him, your 54-hole leader at Farmers a couple weeks back, another place where driver heavy that week and distance mattering a ton. Taylor Pendrith as well, also played pretty well at the Farmers. As we mentioned, Cam Champ, 4th year, SH Kim, consistently across the board. looking pretty good. Davis Thompson, 6th. Alex Smalley, 7th. Mark Hubbard, despite the lack of distance, is coming out very nice. And again, just grading really well in a lot of the other things outside of the carry distance. Finished, I believe, 10th here last year. I had a nice showing here. Has played well here in the past, if I'm not mistaken. So again, he's playing pretty good. 18th here last year. So was in the mix. JJ Spawn, because again, we're not capturing any putting outside of going for the green birdie or better percentage, and the tee to green stuff is pretty nice. Sam Stevens rounding out the top 10. And then some other names that I think make a ton of sense. Brandon Wu, Johnny Vegas, Ryan Palmer, Callum Tarrant, Doug Gim, Patrick Rogers, Joseph Bramlett, Garrett Higo, and Højgaard and Mitchell rounding out your top 20. Like, I would be honest, like, that's a nice 20. I don't know. You think you just can stay in the top 20. These guys all make a ton of sense to me this week. So any takeaways?
Yeah, obviously, like we said, Tony's number is a little, tough to get behind, but it doesn't matter. If you run something anywhere focused on ball striking, scoring, Tony's obviously going to be at or should be at least near the top. Taylor Pendrith has been interesting to, a few people. I've seen him mentioned. He's another one where go look at his numbers on screen. A lot of it's going to be pretty high. It's not great on the rough stuff, but again, that's one of the smallest ones we weighted in here. So good driver distance. We use carry distance, horse piece, I guess. Good on the SG total. If you remember, that third column with the strokes gained total was easy courses or easy scoring, driver heavy. So, hey, he's got he's long off the tee, big carry distance, but he has been scoring on those as well. It's not just, big driver, not doing anything with it. And then, going for the greens, birdies are better. He was fine as well.
Yeah. So we're not getting a sample big enough for Ryan Fox in that category. Fox hits at a mile.
Toasty hits at a mile.
Toasty.
McIntyre.
Yeah.
Honestly, the Cooties.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting to take a look at here as well. Guys that were impacted by a lack of sample in that. But again, it's just tough when we don't have data for a lot of these guys. Now, you look at the DraftKings salary for these guys. These aren't necessarily guys that we should probably be considering from an outright standpoint anyway. Unless you think JV Holmes still has the magic, knock yourself out. But yeah, I think this is still telling a pretty good story in terms of what matters this week and who we should be focusing on. Yeah, it's an interesting top there. So you have not made a bet yet, or you're behind, right? So you haven't run the model, you haven't done anything?
Always behind. I'm always behind until I get caught up. Nope, just been betting Magical Kenya Open. Okay. I'll say I kind of like that event. That's a fun event. There sounds like animals.
There are animals.
Like you mentioned, top of the board fee now is consensus-ish around plus 750. I don't know. I don't know if you have your pricing chart up. I think he's pretty close to that everywhere.
He is. Let me see. We get fee now 750. Yeah, everywhere. Chris is 750 as well. You get Bet Rivers, Caesars from a domestic standpoint down at 7. But yep. That's it in terms of the rest of the guys on the board, where that shuffle's pretty big drop there. Looking at Højgaard next on the board, 16-1. Steven Jaeger came out again second in our model, which go back there to the top, show our model there too. Jaeger down to 22 in most spots, 27 still available on Chris, which I think is very interesting for Andy. Emiliano Grillo didn't pop here. He was just outside the top 20. He's been playing really good golf. Finished, I think, inside the he was T5 here last year. Just absolutely lights out from an approach standpoint and putted really well as well. So hit almost 81% of his greens, gained 2.4 strokes per round on approach. So just showing that he could still get it done. Now look, he's not going to pop here from a distance standpoint, but he drove it on average 299 for the week, which is right on the average for the event. So he's not short. He just isn't he's just not bombing it out there. So, and again, he lost strokes around the green. It didn't matter for the week. So Grillo makes a ton of sense as well. He's next on the betting board. Like I said, 22s for the most part. Chris again a little bit further out at 26, and Dietrich 25. Pendrith down to 25. Pendrith down to Chris has a 28. Caesars looks like they've taken some action on Pendrith. They're down to 18. Thornborn Olsen, we don't see often here stateside, 28, 33. Then you get Keith Mitchell, Patrick Rogers, basically your 30 and shorter tier there. Again, like this next tier is kind of cramping in on it as well. So what jumps out to you here?
Yeah, I think I do like Pendrith. It's a guy I feel like I've been sucked in by plenty of Canadians in the past and probably will be again.
Excuse me?
Sucked in?
Oh, okay.
I've never dated a Canadian, not that I know of, at least. They could have been hiding their heritage from me. But yeah, Taylor Pendrith at 28-1 is obviously interesting. That's probably somebody who's going to make the card. I feel like I got to play a Stefan Jaeger tax because I've bet him enough, and I got a little worried there at the Farmers when he was taking off. I don't love the price, but you got to reset your mind a little when you're looking at a field like this. You're not betting him 24-1 to win the Masters. It is still just the Mexico Open. So Pendrith and Jaeger at the top likely make the card. And then S.H. Kim, Seung-Hyun Kim, 47, 48-1, something along those lines. He's somebody that's, people have made cases for him that I don't hate. I've seen good cases for Keith Mitchell. I don't know if I can ever bet him again. I've seen good cases for Mackenzie Hughes and McNeely. Vincent Norman, but again, all these guys are kind of in the same mix. Like you have to, unless you want a massive card, you have to pick a few guys in this 30 to 40 to 50 range. And then I don't know if I'd get much further than that. You could take some long shots here if you really want to get cute with it, but there's not a lot of big names that I think I'd be betting. Bobby Mack is 100-1, maybe. Like he stung me a little in the Florida swing when he came over across the pond 1 or 2 years ago. I don't remember where it was. I bet against him a couple times and bit me. But him, Johnny Vegas, that was kind of an injury. That was an injury thing. He is long off the tee, and I know he can't putt, but that's not going to matter here. Hopefully, if he's playing well with his ball striking as well, he's 70-1. So a couple guys in that range I'll probably be looking at, but. Starting the card with Pendrith and Stefan Jaeger.
Vegas 12th in the model that we just ran. So it's not bad. So yeah, I mean bombs, that's the problem with this event too, is to your point, like some of the bombs that have interest based off of their price, like they're not really bombs anymore. Like they're getting into I'm looking at Vegas numbers right now, 55, 60, you can get 66 on Rivers, 68 on Chris. Like it's just, again, you kind of have to divorce your mind from normal, like who's in this range typically on a given week where Hideki was 80 last week, but like this is, we're not at the Genesis. We're not at Riv. It's not a signature event field. This is a little bit of a different beast. So these guys are shorter. That's definitely what you got to do, especially at the top with the Jaegers and Højgaards as well. So I know Ron's on Højgaard. He likes him quite a bit. That's just another one that was a little bit too steep for me. I'm with you on Jaeger. I took Jaeger at open at 28. Everything I ran, he also came out on top. He actually came out ahead of Finau for me. And again, like he performed better than anyone in the field in the past year on these driver heavy courses with easy scoring conditions. He's also very aggressive when we look at like going for green percentage just in general. He's fourth in that. First in fairway from 200, which I think matters a ton this week, and gets a buff from the carry distance as well. So he's not like elite, but he's top 20 in those spots. So again, like at least a little bit of familiarity. The only thing that's a little bit, again, this is super noisy. We're going to talk about a 4-round sample. You look at guys last year that finished inside the top 20. Jaeger was one of them. He 18. He's the only guy that did not gain strokes putting, and he actually lost 0.95 per round. He was awesome tee to green here last year. Could not make a putt. So again, like, do I want to make a bet based off of a 4-round sample of how a guy putted last year? I really don't. But hopefully, again, if we can get back to a field average round and he can still be awesome tee to green as he's been already this year, I feel like he's going to be in the mix here in the weekend at 28s. So I like that quite a bit. But that's the downside for Jaeger, I guess.
Yeah, I almost had to ask which. It's not Rasmus. It's the other one. We got to stop having these brothers and twins and stuff. It's just very confusing.
Poor Rasmus didn't get his card, but again, you would think maybe he would make the trek over to Mexico.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, he didn't get in. Obviously, it's Nikolai. Well, I was just looking at some DP stats. It's tough because it's not as you don't have as much stats. But I was just trying to see who some of the longer drivers were over there. Can you name for 2024 who's gained the most strokes off the tee on the DP World Tour? Danish. Still not gonna get it.
That doesn't help. No.
Nicholas Norgard.
Okay.
I
was gonna go Sam Horsfield.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna name the wrong Dane because there's probably only one or two you can think of, but not the guy. So maybe Piss Bear if I'm looking at some of the DP guys. I'm gonna dig into that a little this afternoon if I get some time, digging into some of the stats on that, because there's like a couple dozen of these guys that play a little more on Europe, and maybe get a feel for how some of the ball striking stats are over on that side of the pond for those guys. If I'm going to find a bomb, otherwise, my bombs are non-existent this week. Just looking at the names, maybe Robert McIntyre at 100 to 1. That's about as far as I go. If I was going to pick a cootie, it would be Parker. Parker's about 100 to 1 as well. Don't bet Pearson. I don't think he's quite getting there. Fred. Who just kind of pops off once in a while is Chesko. Like Molinari's 200 to 1.
So
I need to go look at how he's playing. That's not. Yeah. This is not financial advice. Please do not bet Francisco Molinari right now.
Yeah. I'm also with you on Pendrith. I bet Pendrith, and again, he came out third in our model. I think he fourth or something in my model too. I got 35s at Open. That's tougher now. He said 25 still out there, 28 on Rivers if you can get there, 28 and change on Chris. I also bet Davis Thompson at 50, and now he got hammered. He's 28 in some spots, 35s in some spots. Like Davis Thompson quite a bit here as well. Again, just a kind of young kid who's just been way more consistent on the approach part of his game. He hits it far. Has done well from a scoring standpoint, especially from the fairway. So I think just betting on upside and ascending pedigree in a field like this probably makes some sense too. And then I took Doug Gim at 60. Some of the guys I like from an outright or from a bomb standpoint, like Higo, Bramlett, guys that did well in our model as well, also did well in my model. Charlie Hoffman, who's she hits it pretty far, and the long iron stuff actually plays well.
He's kind of in the best form he's been in several years.
So I don't know.
If there were ever a time to bet a Charlie Hoffman top 20, it's in a shitty field like this where he's played himself into form. He looked pretty good out in Phoenix at times.
He did. So that's it. Those guys are not outrights, like you said. I think Hoffman, Higo, Champ Camp, all these stuff, all positional stuff. But they're going to be in the mix. Like Bramlett, hits of the mile is played well here. Patrick Rogers, like you mentioned, Vegas. Those are guys that I think are really interesting from a positional standpoint. So,
sure,
yeah, I wouldn't get too crazy in the rabbit hole this week. I just would keep it pretty simple. And again, I think from the DFS show, you have to tune in on Wednesday because I think you're going to have people just kind of gravitating to us, just this skill stacking, and you're going to have to find some ways to pivot to the Mark Hubbards and the JJ Spawns of the world, that guys that don't necessarily fit the bomber profile, but that fit a lot of the other stuff. But that's the Wednesday show. So
yeah, it is a big ownership week. You're just gonna have to. I don't think it's not gonna be tough to get unique if you avoid Finau.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure you can. So all right, for us, obviously check out Ron's preview or betspertsgolf.com. We mentioned if you want to try to get access to everything premium for just $5. You can find that right on the site as well, too. Right on the front page, there's an article you can click in. That's a bit of an explainer on how to get the Vivid deal. There are 3 steps. You have to sign up using our link, our code. You have to deposit $5. You have to play $5. That's it. you'll get an email with a code to use over on our site. If you have questions or you're not in a vivid state, like I said, DM us at AndyMSFW, at RY Noonan, at PGA Splits 101, at Betsperts Golf. Hit the thumbs up if you watch this on YouTube and you made it this far. Support the sponsor, Pool Genius. The link is in the description. And have a good week. Enjoy it. DM us with anything else you have. Leave comments. Hit us up on Twitter if you think you have the winner this week. So peace out. Catch you next week.